1. The Magician. You have everything you need to make magic. Tools are a vital piece of survival. We need tools to eat, to hunt, to build. We use them to brush our teeth, to wash our dishes, to dry our clothes. Tools are all around us, sometimes necessary, sometimes less so. The magician shows up when we need to remember that sometimes our tools are already within us. What intrigues me about the Taroko is how the major arcana began versus how it has evolved. Look at this guy. He's a person who is creating things with his hands for the benefit of others or potentially just cash. Nothing like the double-terminated crystal wand-wielding occultist that Pamela Smith gave us later. And before you ask, Il Bagatelle does not translate to the magician. It translates to the baubles. According to Tarot Heritage, this card actually has a history of being seen as a card representing swindlers and snake oil salesmen. But I have always seen the magician as a beneficial card, and this ancient Italian workaday version doesn't change my opinion. Over the last few months, I've been thinking a lot about the concept of tools as they relate to magic and witchcraft. I personally love tools. I feel more successful with them. They are often quite pretty or otherwise aesthetically pleasing, and they get a result that I don't have to take full responsibility for. But what if I could see things for others and myself without these tools? Without cards, crystals, pendulums, candles, incense, etc. The thing is, I probably can. You probably can too. So, why don't I? Well, as I mentioned in The Fool, I denied the call for a long time. I was frightened to know or see things. I was scared of what they might say. So I leaned on these tools because divining meaning with a tool is not just easier, but you can blame the tool if it's wrong or hurtful. It's much harder to take responsibility for a vision or a message when you are the only thing coming between the message and the earth. When I was a little girl, I couldn't sleep. I saw things in the dark, heard things in the walls, had horrible, horrible nightmares, and couldn't relax enough to rest. I was plagued with a creative mind that would play out long anxiety stories about how our house would burn down, or how I would be kidnapped, or my absolute worst fear, what would happen if a murderer came and killed my whole family and I survived? I couldn't bear the thought of living without my parents or my brother. I figured I would go live with my grandparents, but would that mean that I would move to their house or they would move to mine? What would it all mean? How would it look? In March of 2018, my brother passed away unexpectedly and tragically due to a misdiagnosis. He too was constantly plagued with anxiety about his health, convinced he was dying at every juncture in his life until he was right. I too was concerned about him, but not because of anything obviously wrong with him. He had a couple of health concerns, but nothing imminently damning. Yet for some reason, I always knew my time with him was short. I would often feel myself taking him for granted, knowing that it was possible he wouldn't be there forever. My brother was 15 years older than me, but I still expected to have him with me for the transitions of our parents and grandparents. However, there's a part of me that always knew he wouldn't make it. For a long time, I prayed every single night for my brother's good health, begging Spirit to keep him by my side for as long as possible. I could feel him slipping away, but I also didn't have any evidence that he would leave. It was an incredibly odd sensation, and I am still trying to make sense of it. The day that he transitioned, I was simultaneously ripped from reality and also somehow grounded in a truth I already knew. Which brings me back to tools. I was afraid to use my magical tools for a long time. Maybe if I had been less afraid, I could have done more divining and worked some protection charms on him, but that's not who I was then. I was being called, but I wasn't equipped to answer. Unfortunately, I think that my brother had to transition for me to see things clearly. Would I rather have my brother and no magical abilities whatsoever? Yeah, no duh. But here we are. I didn't, and I don't get to pick. After my brother died, I was desperate to communicate with him. Suddenly, everything I'd ever been afraid of was now a tool I could use to try to talk to him one last time. But it wasn't that simple. The gifts that I had been tamping down for 32 years were rusty, and frankly, I think they still are. We are all equipped with the tools we need to make magic. The 4 elements are within and without us at all times, and our abilities reside within us to speak and communicate with spirit. If you have been ignoring the call, I urge you to start by stepping into nature and see what she's saying. It can be frightening at first, but it is worth it. The messages don't come to everyone the same way, so try not to judge your experiences. We'll talk about anxiety versus intuition later in this blog, so trust. Centuries ago, Il Bagatelle represented the sneaky side of magic, the swindlers and the phonies. We have been so conditioned to approach the world as skeptics that we forget that sometimes the magician is real. From swindler to occult master, the magician's journey is intended to remind us all that yes, there is a negative side to magic, but there's a negative side to everything. Just like batteries, you must have negative and positive to create power. My goal is to keep leaning into what seems negative and investigating it fully before blindly following the positive instead. And so it is.